Well, thank you guys for coming to tonight's sessions where we're going to do a deep dive look in how we're possibly related through DNA matches to free persons of color with the surnames D through H. Okay, so tonight we're doing D through H. And in the poll that was put in the Facebook group, I'll make my page a little larger. Under Dalton, I don't believe we had, Hope and Rodney. Rodney is a Dalton match. Very cool. So, yay, we'll be reading Daltons tonight. Okay. So, last time we were able to get through most of all of the matches that were the homework assignment. So, that was really cool. So, it looks like we'll probably go through all of them tonight. So, under Dalton, there was Rodney and Hope. Under Davis, there is many of us: Rodney, Amanda, Cindy, Hope, Donald, and me. Rodney, I think I've noticed Rodney is in almost everything, as we just see. Rodney and Amanda is in almost everything. Hope also is under Devin. So any of the black check marks are mines visually. So for Gail, this is who is in these groups. So as we can see now, based on us just trying to focus on the free persons of color descendants that we are, that many of us are having matches out of Maryland to these names. And if we recall, when I did the first initial research, Hill, here is Hill, free persons of color based on the website, and then under Hilton is me, Donald, and Hope. And so going to the free persons of freeafricanamericans.com website here, and I'll put that in the chat again. What we read about these families when we first did our first initial deep dive into them, that practically all of them were descendants of white women who married slaves. And these are women who purposely married slaves. So this is telling us that they were all predominantly indentured servants who chose to have relationships with slaves, and the things that they suffered for making that choice. Many of them were part of the reasons why many of the laws changed as to how they were going to be dealing with the enslaved and mulatto children who by birthright should have been free because their mothers were free. But because their mothers were free and white, they instituted these laws to try to trap these children as slaves and force them to work and not receive all of the rights and privileges as their mothers had. So tonight we're going to start with Dalton. Rodney is the only person that has Dalton, and that's okay, because what we discover in
Sorry, I just did it. I got all of them.
All
I
right, good.
just did it. I'm sorry. I'm gonna go do the last.
Okay, good. Put your name in the chat. I mean, in the Facebook page, just so that when people go back, they can see who has what names. Okay. So this is how these sessions are going to go. I'm going to read line by line. And some people have read ahead and might know some of the names, right? But what we're trying to do is get an understanding of the structure of the family, the history of the family. Then you're going to look, while I read, you're going to go search for Daltons and search for Daltons in Maryland. What I will say is you can search for Daltons that are not Maryland, see how far back close to Maryland you can get. But by filtering your searches to the surname in the tree and the location, we are purposely looking for a family that remained in Maryland or at least started in Maryland, and through our matches and the names they have in the trees. So if you have matches that have these names in their trees, what you're going to do is in the chat, type the surname we're researching and in a tree, the tree that you have, a really good, strong tree. You can share 2 or 3 trees. This is going to be almost the same as if you shared your tree with us, And now when we can research after the Zoom, the people who have matches, we can try to see commonalities through your matches. We know that we match many of the people in the Catoctin group and the Alabama group that join these sessions. We know we match many of us through our Jet Match IDs. This is a way for us to try to understand maybe our DNA matches because of the small centimorgans. It's going so far back to the indentured servants who were here in the 1700s. So remember, type your name. I mean, we already will have your name. Type the surname, so it will be Dalton, and then paste the tree link. And what you're going to be looking for is the names that we're going to be calling out in what I'm reading and what I'm talking through. Okay. The other thing regarding the matches we're focusing on through these sessions, people who have ties to Frederick. So there are other names that we won't be researching because I did not find Frederick as a county in that surname. It doesn't mean off this website you don't have matches to those other names. So this is just a more focused, concentrated research. All right, let's start with Dalton. So Henry Dalton, born September 8th, 1750, was a mulatto. And it says, and apparently the son of a white woman. So this doesn't say who his mother was or even his father so far. But this does say that he was mulatto, so he was the son of a white woman. So given that's Rodney, we know that he may possibly be descending of this Dalton line. But Henry was bound to Samuel Pruitt until the age of 31 years in Frederick. Yes, Rodney.
Okay. While I was obviously in awe of your speaking, and you're great at what you're doing. What I did was I did Dalton and Maryland,
Mm-hmm.
not Fredericks.
That's good.
And here's the dilemma that I have. I have three matches to Daltons in Maryland, but all the trees are private, so I can't look at them.
Yeah. So I'm going to quickly digress.
And the names of the people are Freeman.
Interesting. Well, how do you know they're Freeman?
Because the names of the matches, the surnames of the matches, all have the last name of Freeman.
Oh, Freeman. But you said that they were Daltons, though.
Yeah, they were Dalton matches to me, but the names of the matches themselves, all of them are Freemans, but their trees are private.
Okay, so this is what you would do, Rodney. So you gotta realize with Ancestry, there's gonna be levels depending on how you're paying, right? And so you may not see everything because you may not be paying at that level. So that's one reason why it's helpful to have, if you can get the tree, share the link to the trees. Another maybe connect with someone and say, okay, I have matches to these, but their tree is private. So for people who have Pro Tools, then they may be able to, let's see what we can find. So these are the things that I'm going to share that I would like for you guys to do when you're looking at your matches away from our session or while I'm talking through the names, right? So you're going to type Dalton or the surname, and we're particularly looking for Maryland. So I have access to Rodney's DNA. So these are the three people. So one thing to note is this is saying managed by Jackson 76. So this is a family. And because she looks young, it's probably the same family. So, and because of the number of people in their trees, this is most likely a family, right? With Pro Tools, at some point when you can, get to that level, it's the fees from.
Oh, I have Pro Tools.
Oh, well, then this is what you do. So we're going to click on who is the closest person. They're all the same distance to you. So 5 generations, remember? So a fifth cousin is a third great grandparent ancestor connection. So basically, you take the cousin, you subtract 2. And there's another thing that we need to do to help us to get a closer connection of who that actual ancestor is to that cousin, especially when it goes to smaller chromosomes. But with Pro Tools, choose one of them because they have the same number of people in their tree. And we know that right now we can't see the tree because it's private. But the workaround when you have Pro Tools is to look at the shared matches for the person. And what Pro Tools is going to do is going to show you the relatives that you match with that person, and they may not have a private tree, and you actually have some common ancestors already identified between the shared matches. These people are on your father's side. So all of these matches, most of these matches are coming from your father. And look at so now we can see, even though this was a private tree, you do have a common ancestor with Jackson 76. And so, of course, if you click on your through lines, it's going to show your common ancestor is through Jesse Washington Eldridge. Okay, so this is how we will drill. Now, this only goes to 1805. So what this is saying is they haven't gone far back enough for us to start talking about the Dalton man who was 1750. But this at least will help you to, this is one way to triangulate your cousins, your relationships that you have, your matches. And you know, from working with me, that you're going to go add the people into your tree all the way down to your match and up to the ancestor where you match. And by having them in your tree, now you're able to find stronger trees or other matches. Okay, so this is how we can start triangulating our matches. But we know today we're looking for Daltons. But so what this is saying is the cousin that had all those people in their trees, all those people that in that private tree, that Dalton was somewhere in the tree. Now, what you can also do now that you are looking at the shared matches of those people, just like we did at the first level, we can drill in to all of these people looking specifically still for that name in these people's trees. It might not display. So it did, same thing. We still don't get, so see how now we can see their sisters and brothers. So that's why their trees were private. So what this suggests to me is that these matches were able to go further back than the other people that you were matching. But this is how we can try to triangulate and drill into the possible connection we're looking to get. Okay? Okay. So, Mr. Dalton, so now the thing that we want to do, understanding, starting with him, he's going to allow us to start building a tree, and that has, if we're matching him, you can build a floating tree or you can build a totally separate new tree as a research. And so this is basically would be Henry Dalton. His mom is white, his father's unknown. Now, this is saying he's bound to Samuel Pruitt in Frederick, Maryland in August of 1750 until the age of 31. Now, he was probably the son of Anne Dorton. So instead of it being an unknown white person, female, we can put Anne Dorton in as the mother, say it's for research based on what we found with this person who's already researched. And it says Anne Dorton, who was presented by Prince George's court on 1750 for having a base-born child, no race identified, on information of Jane Martin. I don't know what Jane's correlation is to this, but one great thing about what they did, they're telling you where to look for any court information, the court record date, probably the page, and we know that it would be in Prince George's Court. Okay, so he was mulatto. He petitioned Frederick County, 1775. So by now he's 25, stating that he had been born to Samuel Pruitt in 1750. So now we found a father. He was, oh no, I'm sorry. He was bound to Mr. Pruitt. And remember what bound means is he was supposed to be a freeborn person because his mother was white. But because of in slavery, they bound him to someone else for 31 years. So basically they forced him to be like a servant of that person. So he was bound to Samuel Pruitt in 1750, but that Pruitt has since died, and that his present master, John Randall, had no other claim to him than his marrying the widow of the deceased. So now we see the transference of who's claiming ownership over him. So it went from Mr. Pruitt. Now we're looking at Randall. One thing I like to do, me personally, I'm seeing names. So I go in Maryland and I start looking for Pruitts. Then I start looking for Randalls. Because one thing about it, right, is that these people had families. This man had mothers, he had fathers, and these people are enslaved by other people. And this could be a really strong connection or pointing you in the direction of what surnames are still relating to him. So it sounds like he was able to still use his mother's name, Dalton or Dorton. That's another name to consider. But now he's being bound to different enslavers. And once he gets married, he may be free. His wife may not be free, and she may have a different name. So these are the things that I use to try to help me to see, do I have matches to some of the names that are related to or in correlation to the person I'm researching. Okay, so Mr. Randall married Mr. Pruitt's wife. The court ordered that he be at liberty. He married Eleanor Russell. So now we see Henry Dalton married a Russell. Totally means whoever Eleanor Russell is will read whether she was free or whether she was a slave, but that was his wife. So that means if you're relating to Dalton, you're going to be relating to Russell line in Maryland, in either Frederick. I would say in Frederick because he's bound in Frederick. So this is one reason why you have so many connections in Frederick. Literally. Okay. So now we're talking about 1781. He's born 1750, so now he's 31, still a very young man. And this is showing the marriage records where he married her. Eleanor was probably a descendant of James Russell, a mulatto, who won his freedom in Charles County. So now we're going from, she is a descendant of James Russell, so now we're seeing her father. So now we have a grandfather association with Eleanor, but she was from Charles County. So now this is going to open you up, not just in Maryland, Frederick, now you got Charles County. And these families did not stay together. Most likely they were working in different counties, traveling back and forth. And this is helping us to be able to see that movement of the slaves and how they're finding their mates and they're in different counties. So this is saying because he was the son of a white woman and had reached the age of 31. Okay, so it's basically saying that James Russell reached 31. And he also was a child of a white woman. So that's why he was able to be free. He was living in Prince George's County by 1729. So this is Eleanor's father. Henry was in Mongolia County, Virginia. Henry Dalton from 1791 to 1821. So now we are seeing him with movement in Virginia. And this is where it's handy to be able to see how close is Monongalia. How close is that to Frederick or to, Frederick County? Because he probably may have just crossed the boundary line, went working for someone over in another state because that's where they had property, but it was in still close proximity. So there he was called Henry Dorton, Sr., a man of color. So although his line was Dalton, it sounds like he's following this Dorton name. So these are all the names you want to keep track of for this match. Okay. Starting in 1802, he's farming. He's starting to look like he's in maybe some of the census, maybe around 1810. He was head of an Eastern District Monongalia census of 12 whites. For 1810, so in 1810, he's in Monongalia County, Virginia, listed as 8 free colored. And eight free colored in 1830. So in 1820, that's interesting. See, in 1810, he's listed in the census of 12 whites. But then by 1820, 1830, he's listed as in a home with 8 free colored. Okay. He was granted a pension for his serving in the Revolutionary War. So now we see a Revolutionary War record you can go look for Henry Dorton or Dalton, stating in his application and the date he was born in Bladensburg, Maryland. So this is some amazing information. If this was my ancestor, I would be jumping for all of the joy. So now down here, we start seeing his children. He was probably the father of Daniel, 1776, in Harford County, household of 3 free colored in 1830. I think Harford is close to Frederick, if I can remember hearing, I think Carla shared that with us a while back. Levi, 1785, a man of color, Monongalia. So he had a son in Harford, a son in Monongalia, who was a Mason. And he had children. So somewhere near 1850, we can start looking for the 1850 census, and you can start seeing more of the children's names and the wife name. The daughter in 1820, she hadn't married yet. John, a man of color. He was a Mason in 1820. He was in Monongalia County, Virginia. Henry was in Monongalia. He was mulatto. But then it says, with his wife, Elizabeth, in 1850, a mulatto farmer born in Virginia. By 1870, they moved to Ohio. So now we see by 1870, the family has moved to Ohio. So this is where you're going to have Dalton's or Dorton possible matches in Ohio. Wait a minute, let me back up because this is saying a white wife. So white wife Elizabeth, but then by 1870, his wife is Hannah, who was born in Ohio. So his white wife died, and by 1870, he had a second wife named Hannah. Now we see Bethuel, born 1797, we're closer to 1800s, who was 53 years old. We're going to subtract 53 from 97 to get his birth date. That's weird. Mulatto. He was in Monongalia also. A widower, so his wife had died. And then Nimrod is in Monongalia. So most of the family is Virginia, but we got them moving to Ohio. And I did not see the women marrying. So from this information, don't see the names of who the women married so that we could pull reference to any other family members. So that is Dalton. All righty. So according to the chats, we had Rodney and Hope. These are the Rodney and Hope's matches for Dalton. Okay. Let's move on to the next surname is I mean, oh, I think, okay, here it is. Davis. Davis is pretty lengthy. Okay. Yes, Rodney.
It's funny, but while I was doing the surnames, the shared matches,
Mm-hmm.
whoever this Jackson lady is, she has a lot of trees and all of them are private. So what I did was I said Freeman. So let me just take a look and see if I have any Freemans from Maryland. And I have 5 matches.
Mm-hmm.
So there's got to be a Freeman Dalton connection somewhere.
That would make
And
sense because there
and I'm gonna have to look through a lot of matches. Oh boy.
are other trees. Absolutely. But what happens is as we start seeing repetitiveness in names, now we are able to start filtering before we even reach out to them and say, hey, cousin, I'd like to know whatever. You know, this is how we can do background work before we reach out to people using the application, the software, Pro Tools, the trees, and all of the things that we can to be able to try to figure these things out. Okay,
The
so
reason why I brought that up is because I've been researching and I found out that there was once a slave in Ohio or somewhere.
mhm.
Her slave name was Mom Bet, but she changed her last name to Freeman.
Mm.
So that's and she's famous because she's one of the first slaves to bring a lawsuit against her master and won.
One thing that says to me, depending on what year she was born, she's probably was taken from or moved from this area to Ohio because now you already see movement with the Daltons to Ohio, right? And so someone probably got married to someone by the time the trees have the information that you're looking for. So these are the leads that you use to try to help you to figure out these things. But many times we scratch our heads. How did my family get to Ohio? How did they get to Tennessee? And by doing this, going further back research that has already been done, taking the time to understand our matches to these names, it helps to expose some of those types of research and movements. Okay, Davis.
And by the way, her name was Elizabeth Freeman.
Thank you. In case anyone
Okay.
has Freeman's in Ohio. Davis. All right. So many of us, except Shell. Shell said she had matches to all. She didn't put it in the post, in the poll. Okay, so many of us have Davises. So let's now dissect Davis. So Mary Davis, look how far back she was born. They documented her. She was 1657. So the daughter of Richard Davis of England was a white woman who married a Negro man named Domingo. So he was the slave of Joseph Tilley of Calvert County, Maryland. And Mary and Domingo were living in Lower Baltimore when she wrote the details of her marriage in a Bible. I swear I could have sworn we dealt with Davis' name, but okay. Her daughter produced a transcript of the Bible in Anne Arundel in 1715 in an unsuccessful petition for her freedom. Mary and Domingo were the parents of Thomas here on Lord Baltimore's plantation on Lions Creek in Calvert. And James and Ann Thompson were the godparents. I've seen a few times godparents being listed. I have not been able to see in the same record research that it's saying they're related. They may have been related. They may have just been on the plantation. But these are names to note, especially if they later marry into a family. That was that name. So she had two children, Thomas and Rose. Rose was born in 1684. Thomas was 1677 that are recorded. So Rose, so they don't have information about Thomas, but they do have information about Rose's descendants. She was born at Top of the Hill in St. Mary's County. So this is telling us we definitely have matches to Calvert, which is where her parents were from, other than her mother was from England, and then St. Mary's County, which is where she is now. She was baptized at Notley Hall by a priest named Richard Hebert. Henry and Rose Wharton were the godparents. Rose was 31 in 1715 when she fought for her freedom against Henry Darnall in Anne Arundel County. Henry Darnall had a lot of slaves, y'all, and this is one name I'm definitely researching right now. So it makes sense to me that I'm possibly pulling matches to Davises in Maryland because I'm definitely researching the Darnalls. I'm trying to think if it's this Darnall name. I know it's Darnall, and I can't remember the other name that I'm researching who had died in Frederick. I can't call his name. I don't think it was Darnall, but these families married.
I have one Darnall.
These families in Maryland?
Yeah.
Okay, another thing, remember you guys, post the links of the trees in the chat.
And it's public too. Oh, okay.
Perfect. So write Darnall and then share the tree because this helps us to be able to see who had matches and what trees they had. And then that's the information I put in the Facebook page, the group. Okay, so we know that now we're talking about we've gone from Calvert County parents to the children being in to now Rose is in St. Mary's. And she fought against Henry Darnall in Anne Arundel County Court. So Rose was probably in the St. Mary's County, the plantation, but Darnall was her enslaver. Her granddaughter, we're missing some children here, Rosamond Bentley. So Rosamond was a Davis who married a Bentley. She petitioned the court for her freedom. In 1781, Rosamond and her brother William and sisters Mary, Eleanor, and Margaret Bentley won their cases. So now we are seeing these free persons of color, and this is telling us who Rose's children are. In an effort to minimize their African ancestry, Rose's witnesses testified that the family descended from a white English woman and an Eastern Indian man instead of a Negro man. But the truth came out. So Rose now was the mother of Polly. And what's interesting about how they record this information, I don't see, we know we have Rosamond Bentley. Oh, these were her siblings, but this is Rose's daughter, Polly. Okay, so now we're seeing levels of the family being recorded. What is confusing, then we start seeing this thing called another family. So there's another Davis family, but this isn't, let's see if this is saying she's related and they don't know how. She could just be under the enslaver's name. So Elizabeth Davis confessed to Anne Arundel that she was the mother of two mulatto children, Sam and David. The court sold her children to James Barnes until they were 31 and gave her an additional 14 years of indentured servitude. She was the mother of Sam and David, so they were mulatto. John, the head of an Anne Arundel household of 6 other free in 1790 and 5 other free in 1810. Then over in Queen Anne's County, there's this name Belvidera Davis, 1731, was a white spinster woman convicted by the Queen Anne's County Court for having mulatto children by a Negro. The court sold her mulatto child Anne to Nathaniel Wright. She may have been the ancestor of Abraham, head of a Carrollton County household of 5 free in Talbot County. So as we're looking at this, now we're starting to see the difference in where these names, where they're located. And they're still the same family. So I would be looking for Davis with the names Ann and Nathaniel. And now we see they're sold to the rights. I would also see if I have matches to rights that may pull these names because they might have taken that person's name. But they are being recorded under Davis's, so maybe not. Then Belvidera had a son, Abraham, in Queen Anne's County. Eleanor Davis, 1755, was fined 30 shillings by Queen Anne's court. I don't see no trees in this chat, y'all. Looking for Davis, finding your trees while you're hearing me talk, sharing your links in the chat. And then I'll save the information on the Facebook page where you can research it more further later, looking at the other trees that people shared. Okay. So Eleanor was fined 30 shillings in Queen Anne's for having a child by a Negro slave in 1772. She ran away from her master, James Buller of Queentown, Queen Anne's County, before 1775, when he put an ad in Pennsylvania Gazette offering a reward. An English servant woman has been in the country about 8 or 9 years. She was sold for a mulatto bastard. She is a well-set woman, about 5'3" or 4, had dark-colored hair. And then other members of a Davis family. So this is not showing that they are who they're related to, but they are under the name Davis. Moses in Baltimore City in 1800, Abraham in Charles County, perhaps the Abraham Davis who was the head of a household in St. Mary's County, Daniel, Baltimore City, William, a free Negro, Prince George's County, and James, head of a Frederick County household of 2 in 1800. So those are the Davises. Oh, okay, sure, that's fine. No one else had trees they wanted to share?
I had one, but there was this main match that I was looking at. They had she had over 18,000 people in her tree, but it's blocked.
That's a beautiful tree to share. That's a good, strong tree. So yeah, share that one. Okay. So while you're sharing, Amanda Rodney and Hope had Devin, the name Devin. One thing I like about doing these is if you see crossovers, people marrying into another name. So even though by first glance it looks like you shouldn't read it, it still is helpful to read it because you might glean something out of it pertaining to your own surnames in your tree, in your line. So the Devon family, William Devon, born 1767, he obtained the Certificate of Freedom in Frederick in 1817. He was a mulatto man, 55 years old, born of a white woman in the family of Richard Simpson, to whom said William Devon was bound by the Orphans' Court of the county. He may have been the father of Lydia, who was born 1786, so 19 years later, who obtained a Certificate of Freedom in Frederick County. So, Rodney, did you know if you had any Devon surname matches in Frederick?
Let me go and check, okay? And I'll let you know, certainly.
Okay, no, that's fine. If you do, just put it in the chat because I'm gonna go on to the next name. That's why this was called homework. But so now we're seeing it's very interesting that you're having these matches and they're in Frederick. And it was amazing, it was like, why are we searching for Frederick? matches. Why are we over here? Then to discover we have so many ties to that one little area. It's astounding. But a great deal of it does have to do with the selling, gifting, and hiring out of slaves from Anne Arundel, Charles County, Princess George's, that whole Jesuit corner of the world. That's what they did. Okay, so we're going to go on to Gale. All right, looks like everybody. Cindy has Gales. Cindy, are you familiar that you have Gales?
No, I'm not. I mean, I am since I did the search, but not before.
Do me a favor. I'm going to read the Gales. I want you to study your tree. I have Cindy's tree too, but study your tree to see if anything in there starts popping out at you.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So let's go to Gale. I don't think they're in here. Yep. All right. All right. So Gale Gale is small, but I'll read Gale. So Anne Gale, born 1740, was the servant of Susanna Cox of Cecil County in 1760. When the court convicted her of having a mulatto child, she may have been the ancestor of, I think this is Captain, head of an Octoraro, Cecil County household of 8. Ben, head of an Anne Arundel household of 2 in 1790. Robert in Anne Arundel, and someone named T, head of Frederick County household of 7 in 1810. So I would say, look and see if you have any Gales in Frederick, any of these counties actually.
Okay.
I'm going to go to ChatGPT because one thing I'm not going to do is scan over something I don't understand. What does this mean, ChatGPT? Captain, head of an Octavio, is pretty cryptic. Captain is likely a stylized and informal spelling of captain. Octorero. This is a chance Octorero, a typo or variant of Octorero, which is a real name. Octorero Creek? No. I don't think ChatGPT know what they're talking about. Nope. We'll give them thumbs down. None of that was helpful. Yeah, what is Octorero? Interesting. Okay. ChatGPT didn't help us none. Okay. So Gail was pretty small. Anybody find anything interesting under that name?
No, not me.
Okay. So I'm going to steer off course for a minute because Game is not a name that's associated with Frederick. Game is associated with an indentured servant marrying a slave and having children. And the reason why I'm veering off of this name and how we can, what I want to be able to do is to show you how I'm using this type of information for my own personal use. Yes, Shell. It
Is my mic unmuted?
is.
When you mentioned Gail, I'm gonna put this in one of these matches in the tree because he has like 1,900 people in his tree.
Mm-hmm.
Now, was I supposed to do Frederick, Maryland, or just Maryland?
No, just Maryland
right?
is okay. Maryland is okay, yeah. You'll get more hits on Maryland than Frederick.
Huh?
You'll get more hits on Maryland than just Frederick.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So
And I got game too.
yeah, I know you do. You and I do.
Right.
Shell and I run collectively together with some of these lines. So on this page, when I studied this last year, game, and then as I started looking at matches in the tree, I added it without having a really strong understanding of this line. So what I want to share is what game looks like in my tree. That was helpful. I think they were actually fortune symbol.
Yep.
Fortune. Okay. I gotta find Shell's line. Okay.
Game and fortune, they're very interesting
Yeah.
lines. Those were some slaving people, respectfully.
I know. I know.
Even with game and modeling and Negro Sambo, he
Right.
was African coming here from Europe. He was Irish. He
Really?
was Irish. They called him an Irish Negro. Yeah, there's a whole write up. The write up is done before like people like us was digging. So it's kind of bland. But because they want to make it like they got married when they got here in the colonial
Right.
South, in the colonies. No, those people was married and had children when they got here. They was already married.
Interesting.
And the woman was white. Madeline, our grandmama was white, and he was Irish. He was Irish, and it connects to Barbados. Is it Barbados? No, Bahamas, Saint Elizabeth, where my blood is hitting at.
Barbados, according to them, but we don't know
Because
what.
that's where he trained the slave at. I got a lot of stuff that I dug into him a while back. I'll try to send you some of that stuff.
Okay, yes, share that. So Shell and I match up on this fortune line. Fortune and where else? Jerusha hits me a couple of ways, but this fortune line and mine's matched Mary. She had a Mary fortune and I just had Mary. And so because Shell is like my fourth cousin, third cousin, so Shell is very close to me and her DNA matched to me. So this is how I was able to match up my Mary Susan here to Taliaferro Parker fortune. But in running his line, he connects back to this Sambo, Maudlin McGee, fortune game connection that comes off of this right here. So that's why it's so helpful to have research like this. And then when you find a cousin's tree that is built and is amazing, then it allows you to be able to build your tree. That's Cindy's tree that you see here, but it allows you to build your tree with and now we gather the information that we need to better understand the history. But now after I've added it, I can now take the time and go in and make sure that I've documented the dates and the locations the way they've been recorded by someone who's already done this research. One reason why it stands out to me is because of this Thompson name. And so that's one reason why I'm taking the time to doing this kind of conversation with you guys, is because it's so helpful to read this stuff, and we rarely ever have the time to slow down. All of this is that same game family. So I just wanted to be able to share, what that looks like once you take this information and you can actually match it into your tree. And now, most likely knowing me, what I should have done is I should have copied that link. I should have went to my game game link here, game page, and paste the link into their profile. So once I went here, that right there is the Ancestry version that I saved it as an image, as a link. But you can also just save a website link to their profile. And now you have this reference of where you got your research information from. So, okay. So we are now supposed to be looking at, we did Gales, which was small, Graham. Everybody was excited about Graham tonight. We know Graham is Donald, and some of us, let me see, I'm going to go back to Graham is kind of huge. And how many of us had Graham? Many of us. Cindy has Grahams also. Amanda, Rodney, me, and Hope. Okay. So let's see Graham. Elizabeth Graham was born about 1696, appeared in Prince George's County, Maryland, 1716 with her child who was adjudged to be a mulatto. She was ordered to serve Thomas Wells until November court. Later that year, on November 27th, the court sold her and her child to Thomas Claggett. One thing we know, Donald was connected to Claggett's and didn't know how. And I'm not saying by now he hadn't figured that out. I think I've shared this with him, and we've been sharing research information, and he's researching on his own. But now we're seeing where these connections are coming from. So Elizabeth had a mulatto child, was sold to Thomas Claggett. So now we know for it should not have been Mr. Claggett's. Maybe it could have been, but she was called the servant woman of Thomas Wells. Okay, so something happened to Mr. Wells, and then later in November, she then went to Claggett. So that's why they called her the servant woman of Thomas Wells. When the court bound her 17-month-old daughter, Margaret, so now we have the name of the daughter, to Edward Marlowe. She confessed to having another illegitimate child. She was probably the mother of Catherine and Margaret. And it looks like they're breaking down information on Catherine. They have not identified any heritage to Margaret. Okay, so Catherine, 1715, Prince George's, admitted she had a child by a Negro or mulatto, Nacy, belonging to Henry Darnell. I'm pausing here for a slight second because that name Nacy, Nasy, generally tends to be Nace. And I say that because back then, if you know the Georgetown University sale and all of that, they had butlers. And the butlers had Ignatius, who had a son named Nace. And they kept renaming their descendants Nace. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to quickly see if Donald is relating at all to any of the Georgetown University matches that came through. He does not. And I did spell it right. So, okay. These are the things that sticks out in my head when I'm researching. One thing I will tell you, here's Mr. Donald. Okay, so the Georgetown University piece. We know Georgetown University. Cindy was not aware of Georgetown University. Who on the call is researching that whole Georgetown University sale, ancestors, and connection? Anyone on here? Okay. So this is why I am. When I've said slaves were sold to Frederick or gifted to families that came from Prince George's, Anne Arundel, St. Mary's, all of that type of thing. The reason I'm saying that is, cousins, and I will put this link in the chat. So Georgetown in 1838, at the end of the day, we know about the Jesuits. So the Jesuits were, when they came over from England, they predominantly had a lot of indentured servants. So that's why we're seeing all of this Maryland connections to indentured servants. So, but what happened was over hundreds of years of Georgetown having slaves, eventually they decided they wanted to build a college, Georgetown University. Well, they needed slaves to maintain the Jesuit priests, to maintain the plantations, the work, the college, And then they also were selling slaves, 1600, 1700 time periods. Slaves were sold by the Jesuits or the Catholic priests. And so after hundreds of years of all of this activity going on with these enslaved people, 1838, they found themselves in debt to the tune of about 150 something thousand dollars. And they decided and chose 272. I believe it was more than that, but there was a sale of 272 families, and they identified these families in groups. So these were just the people who were sold to Louisiana. So the reason why I keep talking about 272 and any Louisiana conversation is because if we're connected to these free people of color and the indentured servants, right? The first people who were here working that were free and trapped into slavery, if we are descendants of theirs, then we are also relating to the people who were sold, either through cousins or through a direct lineage. And if we're not aware, we may not know where to look. So this has a lot to do with if you're relating to family in Louisiana, these are the names that you would see. And actually, I did not have any intention on sharing the stuff. And so on this website, these are all of some of the different groups, not every one of them. And the reason why I said Donald, it looked like when I did a search over here on Ancestry under Donald's name, looking to see, did he match anyone that was Georgetown listing? I'll show you why. So with the sale, basically, as I'm doing this, with the sale, they sold all these people, and then over time, people always knew that's associated with Georgetown that slaves were sold, that Georgetown used slaves to try to, there was a part of their history. And now Georgetown, quote unquote, was supposed to be righting the wrong of what they had done. And so now people are researching their family in Louisiana, and now they want to be able to understand, are they related? So when in Ancestry, you search, you're not just the DNA, you want to search the surname, and you just type Georgetown. If you have a DNA match to someone who took an ancestry test, so just like how Catoctin is using 23andMe, Georgetown used Ancestry. And what they did, people said, hey, I'm a descendant of the Georgetown sale. And they were like, okay, prove it, prove yourself. So for me, I am a descendant. I'm not a descendant directly of BH. I'm a different name. So when let me see, I hope it's in here, the NACE name. I'm sure I can find them. So Hawkins, Blacklock, Butler, Mahoney's. These are names that are Hills. These are names associated with the cell. So when we're searching for our DNA matches and we happen to see that we have matches in Louisiana, these are the things we're looking for. Now, just because Donald, when I searched for Donald Georgetown and he didn't return anyone, that doesn't mean, honestly, he's not a descendant. What it means is someone who took a test did not say, I am a descendant, and they're using my tree, or they're using me as a person and my initials to say, here is a proven match. So don't be discouraged if you're not a match. You just have to do more work because no one has stood up to say, I am a match. And now you can link yourself to someone who already has been vetted. I am a match to JH. One second, Amanda. I'm a match to JH. And if you saw BH, BH also had a Joseph Hill. Notice this is St. Mary's. So they were born very early in Maryland. St. Mary's, Anne Arundel, Princess George. And so when we do match them, the first thing we have to figure out, do we match the paternal side? Do we match the maternal side? So just like a regular match, we have to discern and figure out, are we matching on the paternal and maternal side? I actually am matching them on both sides. Thompson is my father's side out of Jamaica. So that's one reason why I pay attention to the name Thompson. I'm paying attention to Virginia because slaves were taken from Maryland to Virginia, as we started seeing with Rodney's match. And just because they're not in Maryland does not mean they're not connected. What it means is slaves were just gifted to another location, and we have to do a lot more searching and digging through records to figure this out. I am matching on this hillside, and that's what I'm vetting now, the records, the research to figure out or discern how I match. So I just wanted to be able to share that. So as I was reading, and I'll go to you, Amanda, as I was reading and I saw that name Nace, I'm like, let me see if Donald might be related to the Georgetown University piece. But again, just because he doesn't return doesn't necessarily mean that he isn't. Like I am related, but through ancestral connection, not a direct ancestor. Not my grandmother's line, my grandmother's father's side, my mom's dad's side. It's through cousins, my grandmother's maternal lines, siblings. Okay, Miss Amanda.
I was just gonna touch bases on what you was talking about the Georgetown cell. Mm-hmm. It's showing that I'm matching with the SL person. Mm-hmm. Showing some Gibson.
That's why
surname back to Campbell.
Okay, so let me show you who SL. Oh, so you saw SL. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is SL who she's matching.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So West is one thing West, I believe, is one of the lines. So Campbell is another line. Harris Harris married a Ware or West. So this is one line. Campbell is definitely another line. And so, yeah. So what I'm trying to do, what I've done is I've put all of that research. I'm sorry. I don't know. Can you guys see a spreadsheet?
Yes, ma'am.
I lost my mind because I was like, no, these people are correlated. So what I basically did is I took the Georgetown University information off Ancestry. Hold on, this might not be. This is it. This is it. When I'm quiet, I'm being dangerous for real. So all of these initials at the top are Georgetown initials. All of the names on the left are Georgetown families that we would be researching and looking at. And all of these X's are where those families cross other lines, other matches that are on Ancestry's website. You see that? And so here I'm trying to figure out what are the surnames that we need to be paying attention to. So you're matching this one right here. And this one right here, you're matching SL, which is way over here. Oh, where is SL? Hold on. This is SL. Okay, so this is SL right here, Amanda. But if you're matching SL, you are also matching SG, MW also. Because these parents are in these other people's kits on Ancestry. You understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
So we can talk offline, but cousins, what I'm saying to you is I was like, are the kits they're showing in Ancestry a single person's kit, a unique individual? And they're not. It's just like I went and my third cousin went and my second cousin went. They're just separate individuals, a part of the same family. So these are not unique individuals. And that's why I said, just because Donald didn't return a name doesn't mean he's not matching. We have to know the information to these families to be able to connect the dots. So I'm not just doing this, I'm doing this globally because it needs to be done. But after I started doing all of that work and all that all the spreadsheets with all these names and these locations, trust me, I got family groups, I got plantations they were on, counties they were living in, who's connected to Diggs, who's connected to Hills, who's connected to Queens. Now I have a better understanding of the possibilities of where my family lines line up with Maryland. But everybody don't got time like me. This is just one of my gifts, but this is a gift I share. So as I'm researching for myself, I'm thinking of you guys, which is why these sessions like these are helpful. Okay. So I just digressed because I wanted you guys to be able to think globally, right? Last but not least, when it comes to the GU 272 sale, what I will tell you is there is a spreadsheet on this website under this page called All Families. I'm putting this in the chat right now. So there's a spreadsheet of every one of these families and all of their separate children. The other thing that you can do, if you happen to find that you match a certain last name, you can go on this page here under families and all families, right? You can go here under families, all families. So she is where, Amanda is where. So is there two? So this is the where group on the page. If you went to where and you clicked on this PDF link, you would now be able to see from the oldest all the way down 15 pages deep that went to Louisiana of this family. So as you're looking at matches in Louisiana to the name where, because you possibly have connections, you are now going to be able, because they've already done the work, to research these lines from Maryland to Louisiana. So prayerfully, this makes sense. And literally, they've already had students doing all this research work. So we don't have to do the work. We just got to do what we got to do to understand it and to figure it out. But it lists, just like what we're reading, who had a child, who married who, when they married, when they died. And on the spreadsheet I showed you, all I did was take this information and put it in a spreadsheet. Yes, Rodney.
So when I go to Google, I just type in what?
Why Google? I put it, you don't have it from the chat?
I don't see it, but
all right, I'll put it I'll put it in Facebook chat. Is where you want it?
Yes.
Okay, I'll put it in the Facebook chat after a while.
Okay.
All right. I'll put the core website, which is the GU 272. Now, another thing I will tell you with this wonderful website, digressing, they do have the ability where you can search for census records. And so it's supposed to be a great website of just reference information. So they want you to be able to use it, not just for Georgetown. This is not just about the Georgetown project. But if you go to AmericanAncestors.org, they have publications, census records, any kind of research tool, research information that you can use. So it's just really a great resource that's free. You can join and then you can get a lot more information, but it is free. But as you can see here under projects, this is where they have some of that the Georgetown Project, as well as other things. They have census records or birth and death records you might be able to find, and all kinds of stuff. So, okay. Back to what we were supposed to be working on. So, Amanda, like if we could connect tomorrow or so, and I can help you to better understand, now that I know you are 272, I can try to take a look and see between your tree and that one where it might line up. But you also look as well, okay? Okay. So, Mr. Graham, Miss Graham, so we see that Mary, whose child, who somebody admitted she had a child by a Negro Taft belonging to Daniel Carroll. That was the name I was trying to think of earlier when I was saying Darnell. It was Carroll. The Darnell and the Carroll's name intermarried, connected. Diggs, another name, interconnected. And these are some of the Diggs names went to Louisiana. And so that's why I'm very interested in these names, because I have DNA matches and relationship connections. So So Catherine had admitted she had a child by Negro Taft, belonging to Daniel Carroll of Upper Marlboro. She was ordered to serve an additional 7 years after her first initial indenture. So now we can see how they stacked. So every time you had a child by a Negro and you was white, they added 7 more years. So she was like, I might as well be happy. My children bound for 31 years, so let me be bound with them. You know? And her child was bound to Mary Claggett until 31. So she was called Yellow Kate when the court ruled that her son Moses, who was begotten by a Negro, and ordered that the child be sold to Mary Claggett. She confessed she had a child by Yarrow, a Negro, slave of Thomas Gant. So, Donald, were you familiar that you also are looking for Gants? Possible?
No, not at all.
Okay. So as you can see here, she had a child by Yarrow under the Catherine's descendant line, and had a slave by Thomas Gant. I think Gant might be an enslaver. So the court sold her and her 4-year-old son Dick to Dr. Haswell. She confessed to having 2 illegitimate children, Anne, born in 1736, and Charles in 1738. The court sold Catherine to the sheriff, Osborne Sprague, for 28 years. Jesus. She was called a mulatto woman, Kate, about 31 years old, supposed to have 21 years to serve, when she was listed in the inventory of Dr. John Haswell. She was the mother of. So what I'm trying to make sure I can understand, I see Haswell, but I see the sheriff person. So Haswell must have hired her out to work for the sheriff. But she was still owned by Haswell. Okay. Have you possibly, Donald, done a search for any Haswells?
No, but I am related to the Spriggs through my Baltimore side.
Okay. Did Sprague come up in this paragraph?
Yeah, Osborne Sprigg. Yep.
Yeah, there you go. So you have some DNA matches to Spriggs?
I haven't searched yet, but just through the records I found were related
Okay.
to Spriggs.
Okay. So yeah, through the records, they may own them and not necessarily have had relations with the slave. So, okay. So through the records, you've seen ownership. Okay. So she was the mother of Hannah. Dick was 16 years old in 1750. He was in Prince George's County and on the estate of Mr. Haswell. Anne was 14. She was listed in the inventory of Haswell. Moses, Charles, he was in the estate of Sprague. Sarah and Eleanor. So the family was split apart. Have you added them in your tree, Donald?
Sarah, but I think she's the only one I have so far.
I would add this whole hierarchy family. You got to do it. And they're giving you the relationships here so that you can comfortably and safely add them to your tree with proper dates. See that?
Yeah.
I would add them because now once you add them, and I hate to be I'm not. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to show you guys how I add enslavers. Okay, so right here. So we know that we can have biological parents, but how do we add and track the enslavers that are associated with our family? So I just go to relationships and I add them as an additional mother or an additional father. And the reason I don't add them I add them as a spouse if they're a spouse, but don't nilly-willy just add an enslaver to your tree. You'll want to add them. I add them as a father, but I make them a guardian. You have so many other options other than guardian. Be consistent. Use the same one over and over and over again. And what happens is when you do that, now I can see that Fortune Gain was a female, married Robert Gain, but the enslaver was married, and they will always be right here. The males and the females. So this is another way to document an enslaver. And that way they're linked to your profile. Okay. So I just wanted to add that since we were talking about, well, for me, I saw the different names of the enslavers associated with this family. I line them up with everybody because they're tied to everybody in that way. Okay. So they broke down Sarah. 8:30. Okay. So out of all the children here, so Donald, you have Charles Sprigg or a different Sprigg? A different one in Sprigg's estate.
Really, because I know might be.
This was 1750, so it was a while back.
No. It's Sarah Graham, who was with Osborne Sprigg, who I have. She's the only one.
What was her date? What was Sarah's date? Because this might be a daddy.
Well, as far as I know, 1750.
12 years apart.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he's her brother, right?
It could be a brother. It could be a brother. And so, women, you said Sarah Graham right here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, she's a brother. Okay. It didn't say who she was associated with, so we could possibly assume, based on what you know, that Sarah was with the Spriggs and maybe Eleanor was too. Okay, let's see what they say about. So they are going to give us information on Sarah and Eleanor. So Sarah Graham, 2-month-old mulatto of Catherine, was bound to John Claggett of Rock Creek. She was apparently the 10-year-old mulatto girl bound until 31, who was listed in the inventory of Osborne Sprigg. She was called Mulatto Wench, living in Mount Calvert. So she was also in Mount Calvert when the court ordered her sold for 7 years and bound her 5-month-old son, James, to Thomas Claggett until the age of 31. So you have Sarah with the son, Thomas.
Her son's James. Sorry. Thomas is the enslaver.
I'm sorry. You're right. You have James, Sarah and James.
Yeah.
Okay. She was a servant of John Claggett of Frederick County when he presented a bill to the court for expenses for her bastard child, mulatto child. Sarah admitted in the court that the child was begot by a Negro. The court bound the child to Claggett for 31 years. Convinced of having a female mulatto bastard child who was bound to Claggett also. Do you have any DNA matches to Claggett?
I can't remember, but I did do a DNA search on Claggett one time.
Okay.
I just can't remember what it came up with.
Okay. So James was born a 22-year-old Negro in the house of Claggett. Census for St. John's and Prince George's parishes of Prince George's County. So James is in Prince George's. Amos is in Kent County, Maryland. Roger is in Dover, Kent County, Delaware. And Lethe is in Wilkes County, North Carolina. And so you're tracking all of them, right, Donald?
Yeah, I did find a few records for them too.
Okay, cool. Yes, Rodney. Yes, Rodney. Okay,
I think that's my hand.
Okay, go ahead, Shell.
When you say Claggett, Donald, I do remember specifically. I cannot imagine why. When I ran his kit, he was really close to Bill and Crystal.
Right. Yeah, you do have DNA matches to your Jed match to Bill, Crystal's husband, Bill Claggett.
Oh wow, because I spoke to Crystal, I think, last year too.
Okay,
so I
wish I had known though.
Yeah, they're related. Like if you connect to Crystal, you connect to him too.
Right, because they realized they were distant cousins. But the thing is, so Sarah's having all these kids, then Mr. Claggett is the daddy. Period. Whoever we're talking about, Mr. Claggett is a father to that line, and if that line is yours, then that's that line you follow because of Bill. Right?
No way around it.
Okay, there you go. So now you know.
Right.
All right, so thank you for that, Shell. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. I'm glad I.
Okay, so Eleanor Graham, born 1742, confessed in Prince George's County, 1761. She had a mulatto child. The court ordered that she be sold for 7 more years, sold her 1-month-old son, Aaron, to her master, Zechariah Lyles, until the age of 31. The court ordered that she be sold for a second 7-year term and ordered her 2-month-old child's son, Moses, bound to Zechariah Lyles also. The court ordered that she be sold for a third 7-year term and bound her 5-month-old child. So now she got 28 years on her head until the age of 31. Sold her 6-week-old daughter, Sarah, to her master until age of 31. The court ordered her sold for a 5th 7-year term and ordered her 5-week-old daughter, Kitty, sold to Marjorie Lyles until the age of 31. Nell, Aaron, Moses, Sandy, and Sarah were in the 1768 Prince George's estate of Zachary Lyles. Now, this is my problem. She never moved, but she kept having babies. Who is she indentured to? Her master was Zachariah Lyles. I'm sorry, that sounds to me, that's the daddy. She kept having, but wait a minute, is Eleanor black? She was mulatto. Okay, she was mulatto. No, she was white and she had a mulatto child. So I'm very confused. Somebody here, she had a mulatto. So she must be black. She's black. And we're already in the Graham. So she's black. Eleanor is the daughter of, there we go, Catherine. Eleanor is the daughter of Catherine. Eleanor's black. So she kept having these mulatto kids, but her master was Zachary Lyles, and every year or two she kept having kids, so Zachary Lyles is the daddy, because all the kids kept coming out mulatto. Donald, and anyone relating to the Grahams, now we got the name Lyles. Have you searched for Lyles?
I don't know if Eleanor is my line. I think it's only Sarah.
Lyles in Maryland?
Are you crazy? Yes. So,
Okay.
so this why. Sarah is right here. Sarah mama is Catherine, Donald. These people are siblings.
We said that before, yeah.
So her children are going to be your cousins because these are siblings.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you would have cousins that are under the Lyles. Right?
Absolutely.
So no, they're not direct lines. No. So it just depends. If you're looking for everybody in cousins, then they're also, what it does is it helps to better substantiate why you're getting all these other matches, because they're showing you cousin matches, but where you're matching at goes all the way to the top with Catherine. So that's why I build my tree and I add all these people, because it helps to support and substantiate the cousins that I find DNA matches to. Okay.
Deborah.
And I
Deborah.
just found Lyles. Oops, sorry.
Okay, Rodney, and I'm gonna come back to you. Go ahead, Rodney.
No, let her go first because I accidentally interrupted her. So let her go first. Ladies go first, and then I'll tell you what I have to tell you.
Okay, go ahead, Amanda.
It was just something quick. I was searching for Lyles in Maryland, and I do have one match to that.
And you have Grams. So however many Grams you have, you're gonna also have Lyles. So this just supports the fact that they're related.
Okay.
And following that line and adding these people in the tree once we figure out where, so yeah. So that would why that would make sense. Go ahead, Rodney. And Rodney is also Grams.
By the way, wait. I have more than I have a lot of Lyles. So that might be also how Donald, you and I, and Amanda are related.
Yep. Well, we got to remember, it goes right back to the indentured servant that we're tracking.
Right. So they owe me a lot of birthday gifts. I'm just letting them know.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So we got to remember that we are descendants of the first initial indentured servants who became slaves that came to America. We're going to be related. Hundreds of years ago, we're going to be related. We have no choice. And that's where the small DNA comes into play. Our lines might not have ever crossed again through another cousin line. Slaves get separated. But this is why, for me, this is important to go through, because we realize we do have these connections so far back. It makes sense that we're going to have crossover later in life, closer to our generation and our time period and our grandparents' time period. Okay. All right. So yeah, so you would also have Grams, Donald. You started with Grams, so now you know Lyles is another name. Okay. So we talked about Lethe. Did we talk about Aaron? No, Eleanor. Did I do Eleanor? Zachariah Lyles, and then all her children that she had. So Aaron was 1761. Moses was 1763. 2 years later, he ordered by Frederick County, Virginia, to serve his master Ignatius Perry an additional 2 years and 4 months for time lost and expenses in taking him up. He and his wife Flora, so now we have a couple, were in a list of free Negroes and mulattoes, and William Kercheval's district of Frederick County, Virginia, living on John Rhodes' land in 1802. And he was a Negro taxable in Loudoun County in 1801, 1804. What this says to me is, if they're in Virginia, here we go. So now we're going from Maryland to Virginia. If they're in Virginia and they're living on Mr. Rhodes' plantation, imagine if they have children, their children connects to Rhodes. And so now all of a sudden you have Rhodes connections that are coming out of Virginia. And in our mind, we're like, well, Virginia is so far away from Maryland, it's separate. No, that's why this exercise is to help you to see how the same families are separated through distance, still make some family. And by doing this, we can have a better understanding of where our family are and where to look. Sandy is in Frederick, Virginia also. Sarah and Kitty are a year apart, so they're most likely there also. But Thomas was registered in Prince George's, Maryland in 1811. Has a yellow complexion, is about 38 years old, pale eyes, thick lips, was raised in Prince George's County in the family of Ignatius Perry, and is free. Being descended from a free woman named Eleanor Graham. There are all the Grahams. So once you go through the exercise of figuring out where they connect, build a new tree until you finally see where, and add all the cousins through all these trees. And once you finally figure out where it is, now you can add it to your own personal tree. That's what I would do.
Cousin Delbra.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Cousin Hope. I found a tree that has Eleanor Maria Lyles, 1759, Calvert, Maryland, and she's married to Gilbert, Ireland. So they may want to look for Ireland as well.
Awesome. Can you put the tree in the chat?
I'll put it in the chat.
Perfect. And write Graham, and then the name that you're doing, that you're speaking of, and then put the tree. Because then I copy the information into the Facebook page so that we have all the trees that we can research from.
Okay.
So it's almost like sharing your tree with somebody.
Okay.
These are with targeted surnames. So, okay. I think Hope you was on almost all names. Yep, Hill. Yeah, I was finna say, I'm surprised if I didn't have Hill. I definitely knew I had Hills. So here we go with Hills. Graves. Griffin. Greenwich. Okay, that's in another grouping. And remember, I'm only looking at the ones associated with Frederick. Oh, that was a Hill. How far? Hill is pretty decent. Okay, Hill family. Anthony Hill was born 1700. A Cooper was a mulatto man who was the servant of Captain Richard Smith, 1725, when he was convicted by Prince George's County Court of stealing cider. He got 30 lashes, stand in the pillory for a half hour. His mistress, Elizabeth Smith, wife of Richard, a Quaker, petitioned the court saying that Anthony was a mulatto born of a white woman and had unlawfully absented himself from their service for 6 months. The court was undecided on how to rule, so he married a Williams. So Hill is going to now cross Williams in Anne Arundel County. He was called Anthony Hill, a carpenter in Anne Arundel. He mortgaged livestock, so he was a man of some wealth. He received a deed of gift from William Barton, which is his land. The sheriff sold this land to Anthony's to settle Anthony's debts and fines. He may have been the ancestor. So he just had a lot of things he was doing. Which is okay. It just helps to see that he was living his great life, in this time period. So he was the ancestor of Elizabeth Hill, daughter-in-law of Anthony Hill in Anne Arundel. When she presented for bastardy, the court ruled that the law did not apply to her since she was a free Negro. She was Elizabeth Williams in June when Anthony Hill was security for her appearance for assaulting Elizabeth Jacobs. Sorry, there's Elizabeth Williams and then there's Elizabeth Hill. So I was just trying to get an understanding. Okay, Anthony is in Frederick County, 1790. William a mulatto, head of Port Tobacco, Charles County, household of 8 other free, 1790. Humphrey, Montgomery County. Montgomery County, remember, is close to Frederick. 8 other free in 1790, 4 other free, and 4 slaves. So he had 4 other free, his family, and 4 slaves in Charles County in 1810. And we know that many times they had slaves because they just wanted to keep their families safe, or people that were close to them safe. William a mulatto was in Charles County. Ignatius, or remember I said the name Nace? Ignatius is in Charles County. Sarah is in Charles County. Charity is in Charles County with 3 other free and 2 slaves, perhaps identical to Charity Hill. Yeah, she was supposed to be Hill, of 3 other free and 6 other free and 2 slaves, James and Charles. So James married a white woman here. Well, James was with a white woman. And Charles, 8 other free. And members of the Hill family, but it doesn't say that they are relation to Anthony. So I can't tell if this might be a sister, because at the top, Anthony is number 1. And then members of the Hill family, it says here, number 2 is Levin. Daniel is in Dorchester. Henry is in Dorchester. A different Henry is in Dorchester. Same year, so this is a different person. Robinson Hill obtained a certificate of freedom in Dorchester. Son of Margaret Robinson, now deceased. Levin Hill was in Dorchester. He and his wife Millie were the parents of Letha in Dorchester, who was freeborn, age 20, and married. Is the daughter of Levin Hill and Millie, and other members of the Hill family. John in Kent County, William in Kent County, Stephen, 1800, was in Baltimore City. Another Stephen was in Baltimore City. James, head of Baltimore Town. in 1790. Margaret, East Nottingham, Cecil County, and James, head of an Elk Neck, Cecil County, 1790. The Hills are another family connected. The Hill surname is also another name connected to the cell, the GU272 cell. So that's why it's important to me where I'm trying to track the ancestors of the cell. These are all ancestors of the cell. So that's why it's helpful to understand the history side of these names. So as we begin to start researching the Maryland, the Anne Arundels and all these other locations, now it starts making sense because we're gathering the historical aspects of the families. And now we can see what they were looking like in 1820 and 1830. And then if they remained in Maryland, that's another reason why we're purposely filtering to Maryland, because they remained in Maryland. So it doesn't mean that you can't open your searches to other locations, but this is a concentrated search in Maryland on purpose. All right, last one, but not least, Hilton. Hope, me, and Donald.
I checked and I do too. I have Hilton.
Oh, you do. So I was going to ask you, I was going to wait to the end, but I'm going to go ahead and let you do now. So remember you were looking up that one name, was it Gail? To see how maybe if any trees matched anything that was familiar to you? Cindy?
Oh, okay. No, I did not find anything. I think my tree is too white. Do you know what I mean?
I knew you was gonna say that.
I didn't really want to.
I love her.
Makes me feel uncomfortable, but
oh baby, don't you feel uncomfortable? Because
okay,
you're gonna help us to figure this stuff out. So this
I
is
have
these
all
trees.
these names. You know, you're mentioning other names as we read through this, and I have all those names, and it's overwhelming.
You're not sure where to connect. Yes, she's been saying that for a year since I've known Cindy. This is Cindy's tree. And before I read Hilton. And what Cindy's tree, why she says it's too white. So she's Irish.
Well, those don't even count. My dad's side, they didn't even come over till 1880s.
But do understand something, love. Just because they don't look like they left, they could have came over here and went back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So another thing you want to do is, so where is this? 1862. Take this to the 1600s, baby.
I'm working on it. I've got real people from Germany I've been in touch with and other people, and they say he didn't remember his father's name. It said on some documents, and I've got 2 different names I'm working on there.
So what I'm going to tell you is, just like I did with Rodney, right? You take your DNA and just filter it to Iwers on your maternal line. And then just go look for people who got a better tree than you. Find this name Carl and take this tree and add them to your tree as far back as it can go till about 1500. And so I'm seeing other people have already done the work. And that's why it's a beautiful thing to be able to have these public trees, because it allows us to take ours further. And so the reason why you don't see anyone right now is because you've halted it. There were many Germans in Frederick, honey.
True.
Big time.
But everything that I've been finding tonight is from my
maternal line.
The Norman Mason, on down to Haslett.
Okay.
And they were definitely Anne Arundel, Frederick.
Yep.
The Hasletts moved to Ohio, and then on the one side, the Mason side, they went to Virginia, South Carolina. It's just wild.
So listen, take the tree as far back as you can until they get to the native country. That's what I do. I research every name until I can take them back to their native country, and then I stop. because what that basically means is they migrated over here from another country. So everything for me is red, right? So I'll follow this until I go all the way to their native country, and then I stop. Once he came over here from England and he settled here in America, I'm good. I don't go any further, even though I now have hints. So this is why I'm saying to you, you don't have to build it. Other people have. That's what these hints are here for.
Right.
But I
But if
take it this far back.
But if I can't really prove it, I try not to add it, you know.
Girl, we can prove this later. This your tree.
Okay. Okay, it's my
But
work.
one thing you can do in reviewing the details, I like look at the details, look at the record, and look and see what information are they showing to be proof of that source.
Right.
And this is a great way. And then down here you have people who are, sometimes the information is wrong and then I just got to delete it. Sometimes they have duplicate names, drives you crazy. How would you have two Williams? How would you have two Thomases? That part can drive you crazy. I just add one. But we are really doing research. But
Right.
you're doing a disservice to me, to yourself, by not taking it as far back to the native country, because now you can see why you're not seeing your matches to these people that are coming through.
Yeah. Okay.
Especially the ones where we're talking about tonight. Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because as you can see, this is 1699.
Right. It's fascinating.
So Miss Coffee Hilton, born 1699, was apparently identical to Coffee, who was manumitted with, okay, so that's a guy, with his wife Sue by Evan Jones of Kent County, Delaware. Jones gave them his farm, an additional 50 acres. How nice was he? A horse and a gun. Coffee Hilton purchased land from John Reynolds. He sued Robert Butcher. Okay. He was taxable in Duck Creek. I'm skipping. He made a wonderful life for himself in these trying times. He confessed in Kent County Court that he owed Thomas Green he sold 50 acres called Coffee's Purchase, branch of Duck Creek. So he had land. He was doing big things. He was 72 years old on 1771 when he petitioned the Kent County Court saying he had raised his grandson, John, son of his deceased son, John, since the age of 5. And now he was 16 and able to help his grandfather. He had been bound out as an apprentice to Charles Cahoon. He was the father of. So he was an indentured servant, and it looked like they honored his contract, and he was able to live his life as a free person of color and marry and have land. So Mr. Hilton, had a pretty decent life in these trying times. So his children was Coffee in 1722, Phyllis in Kent County, Elizabeth indicted by the Kent County Court when she was said to have ran away. George, a laborer of Duck Creek 100, who confessed in Kent County Court 1748 to being the father of an illegitimate female child by Elizabeth Butcher. So if you have Hiltons, you're going to look for Butchers. Coffee Hilton was his security to support the child. He had a male illegitimate child by Elizabeth, for which Thomas Green was his security to support the child. He was taxable in Duck Creek 100 on his father's property. Emmanuel was in the same property, a free Negro in Dover. John, 1733, died in 1760 when his son John was 5. Coffee Hilton. So what Coffee is this? 1720. So this must be a continuation. He may have been the father of George, 1750. Is there another wife? Okay, so was taxable in Duck Creek, called Coffee Hilton Jr. until 1771. He may have been the father. So maybe there was another wife, or this is just a continuation of children. George Jr., born 1750, perhaps a George Hilton who was an inn taxable in Duck Street, a free Negro. John, 1757, identical to John Hilton, who was head of a Newcastle household of 4 other free. Charles, a free Negro in Dover, and James, head of a Newcastle. And then in Maryland, there was an Ann Hilton, 1738, servant of Henry Gaither in Frederick County, Maryland. Bound her mulatto son John to him until 31. She was the mother of John. He ran away in 1778 when he was 20, when his master, Henry Gaither, placed an ad in Pennsylvania. About an 18-year-old had a leather hat, court shirt, and long breeches. And then Dave in Harford County, which I believe is close to Frederick as well. All right, gang. That is it. That was the assignment for the night.